Twab! Sit down. Grab a snack. In that order, though. If you don't have snacks within arm's reach, it's too bad. We have a lot of Sandbox changes to address, a lot of them being pretty good things, a lot of love being given to underperforming subclasses, so let's move as quickly as possible because we're going to be here a while. First up is separate melee actions. They are coming in Season 15. This is for the people who want to have more control over their charged versus uncharged melee abilities. So yeah, sometimes, no, I didn't want to stab that cursed thrall in the face, I wanted to throw my knife at it. This is for you. Auto melee is the new name for the current melee function and how it works. Charged melee is a new action that always activates your charged melee, and uncharged melee is a new action that always activates your uncharged melee. You'll be able to make these changes in your settings menu, and there are some caveats to what you can and can't bind. For example, melee attacks trigger on press, not on release, so binding it to a double click or a long press of a button will not work. If you assign charged and uncharged to the same button, it will do the reverse of what the game does now. So it'll always throw the charged melee regardless of range, and then if you don't have it charged, it'll do the uncharged. Great, good, awesome, very nice. This has been a highly, highly requested feature for a very long time. Very glad to see it enter the game. Next up, Sandbox. There is a lot. First up is Stasis Freeze overall. Frozen players can now break out while airborne, breakout animation and camera transition was shortened, and long freeze and short freezes now have different visual treatments so you can see what kind of freeze you're under. I'm always a fan of less annoying stasis effects, so we're big chillin' on this one. Next up is sliding. This is some very unexpected stuff. Sliding is very good, and people slide into every single engagement. It's low risk, it's very effective, it's just what you do. Bungie wants to curb some of that effectiveness, so that we're not just sliding everywhere. While sliding, players will now get the following penalties starting in Season 15. Minus 20 stability, plus 15% shotgun pellet spread, and 1.5x flinch. They claim it looks scarier on paper than it actually plays, so we'll see about that. After reviewing comments from the community and talking with some of my peers, I'm not even going to try to discuss this in any sort of way. I'm going to let you find another more PvP-focused creator for comments on this because I clearly am not educated in this topic enough to have a reasonable discussion. I don't mind Slide Shotgun getting nerfed even more. I'm really tired of it, but this does have implications for every other weapon type, which I do need to educate myself more on before having any more discussion. Titans, you're up. Rally Barricade. Nobody uses it. Rally Barricade now gives the following buffs. 30 stability, 10% range, minus 50% flinch. Pretty nice. Not sure how much I'm really going to use it in high-end content since I mainly use Barricade for defensive purposes, but I'm certainly not going to say no to free buffs. Also, all barricades are getting buffed. First off, they're all now extending into the ground a bit to protect Titans from being hit on uneven ground, which is amazing, thank you. And second, they're making it so players moving at super fast speeds that didn't take full damage from the barricade now take full damage from the barricade. This is mainly a PvP thing. You still won't die from it, but you can't just zoom through a barricade unharmed anymore. Very, very down for that, although I will miss just shoulder charging through a barrier to hit another player relatively scot-free. Actually, come to think of it, I still think you took a lot of damage, so maybe that won't really affect it that much. Anyway, moving on. Behemoth. The movement speed nerf was overdone. Cryoclasm slide hurt PvE stasis users, so Cryoclasm base slide now shatters crystals and frozen enemies, and the duration of the screen effects notifying players that the cryo long slide is ready is increased from 1 to 4.5 seconds. And then finally, Shiver Strike movement speed was increased 25%. Great changes there. Shiver Strike was basically a meme, and the cryo change should clean up some PvE woes. I know I was experiencing them recently when I was doing some solo GM stuff. Middle Tree Sunbreakers. Throwing a hammer, it's pretty fun, but it causes anxiety sometimes because you gotta worry about tracking down the hammer after you throw it. Also, it's not very strong until you stack it all the way to 3x Roaring Flames. So, Hammer can now stay on the ground for 10 seconds, up from 6.5, before it explodes, and damage was increased against powerful PvE combatants by around 50%. Huge. Love this change. Not much else to say other than awesome. Top and bottom tree striker, melee supers. They're not very great right now. They are at a disadvantage. Bungie wants to do some buffs to them. Fist of Havoc slam detonation radius increased by 14%, reduced slam damage falloff, and reduced slam attack energy cost from 21 down to 18%. It's fine with me. Little bump up for Fist of Havoc. Cool. Middle tree, Inertia Override is getting buffed to a 6-second duration, up from 4, and sliding over an ammo brick now gives 20% melee energy. Pretty nice buff. However, this is going to be balanced out with something not mentioned yet, so until I know what that is, I'm not really going to comment too much, but the buff's pretty nice. It's pretty cool. Top tree Sentinel. This one's very interesting. I did not see this one coming. The changes refer to the Ward of Dawn itself, not the players within it. At the moment, dropping a ward on a boss is really effective. It's a no-brainer. You're almost completely invulnerable. The goal of the following change is to reduce the effectiveness of doing that. So, in Season 15, Ward of Dawn, the ward itself, damage taken from bosses has been increased from 0.25x to 7x. But it now scales with resilience. So if you have 0 res, your bubble is not going to last very long at all if you just slam it on top of a boss. If you have high resilience, it should be operating pretty close to the same that it does right now. It's just that you actually need to spec for it. You need high resilience in order to get that same effect. Very interesting change. I respect it. Ward is mainly used as a weapons of light prop right now and not really a damage barrier, save for like 1 or 2 dungeon bosses. So I don't know how much this is really going to be felt overall. Hunters, you're up. Silence and Squall. The silence is strong, the Squall is not. It can basically be completely ignored, so they're speeding it up 20% so that the Freeze Tornado is actually more of a threat. The storm also now stops when it touches a boss, presumably because the game now assumes you wanted to throw it at a boss or have its final destination be at a boss. That's totally fine with me. Withering Blade has its projectile speed and tracking increased by 10%. Tiny little buff to make it slightly easier to land. I guess I can deal with that. Middle Tree Gunslinger not getting too much, but Knife Trick has had its burn duration increased from 3 to 4 seconds so that you can take advantage of playing with fire a bit more. Very cool with me, good stuff, but very, very minor. Top Tree Gunslinger is having its damage fall off on its super now start at 25 meters instead of 20 to make PvP one-shots happen with a bit more frequency as opposed to 2 shots. I think that change is fine. Arcstrider definitely needs some love, and it is getting some. As mentioned with Fist of Havoc, melee supers are in a tough spot right now in the game, both PvE and PvP, with Arcstaff being one of the weaker ones. So, they extended the passive super duration from 16 to 20 seconds, heavy slam detonation radius increased from 5 to 6 meters, and increased damage versus PvE combatants by 33%. Awesome. Deadly Reach from Top Tree had its duration increased from 8 to 10 seconds, and Lightning Weave from the Middle Tree got a pretty decent change. Dealing damage with Tempest Strike now triggers Lightning Weave, and the timer can be extended by dealing damage with any weapon. Solid start for Arcstrider. We have a bit more to discuss with it at the end of the video. Middle Tree Nightstalker is one of few things getting nerfs. Damage reduction in your super is reduced to 47% from 52%, and the additional damage reduction while invis was reduced to 3%, down from 5%. It is one of the best performing subclasses in Crucible, and Bungie wants Nightstalkers to be stealthy assassins, not stealthy raid bosses. Warlocks, you're up. Winter's Wrath, it's really strong against supers, but now you must freeze and shatter twice to kill the following supers: Burning Maul, Fist of Havoc, Sentinel Shield, Nova Warp, Arc Staff, and Spectral Blades. Yes, those are all melee supers, and they want to give melee supers a fighting chance against you, which is fair. For now. Top Tree Dawn. It's really strong. It's too strong. It is getting nerfed. Celestial Fire, the melee, reduced tracking cone angle, Proximity detonation now shrinks over time, reduced detonation size by a meter, damage fall off increased at short distances. Icarus Dash is being made more consistent to fight against and to actually be assessed by other players. You get 1 every 4 seconds. If you have Heat Rises, now you get 2 every 5 seconds. Heat Rises now last 15 seconds instead of 10. The time extension awarded for air kills while Heat Rises was increased, with that extension duration differing based on the enemy that you kill. Your location now also appears on enemy radar when using Heat Rises. Bungie wanted to reduce the positioning flexibility of Top Tree Dawn a little bit since they're so incredibly mobile. I'm very glad they did not touch the ability energy portion of this subclass to leave it mainly intact in PvE. You're still going to see some movement reductions in PvE, but the ability energy is something that I thought was very, very important to it in PvE. Middle Tree Dawn, aka Well of Radiance, is getting the Ward of Dawn treatment in PvE. At 0 resilience, the Well of Radiance itself now takes 1.5x damage from bosses. It used to be 0.25x, but you can now scale up the Well's strength with resilience. It's also getting a PvP buff. While in a well, you now take 40% reduced damage from players, up from 20, and you're immune to stasis, slows, and freezing, although the Well Sword can be frozen and shattered, but it will take multiple shatters to break it. Guiding Flame was also buffed. For some reason, it's now 10 seconds instead of 7, and it's now a 25% buff, up from 20%. I didn't think this needed a buff, but like, I'm not going to say no. Like, if you're offering, I'll take it, but okay. Again, I respect this move. If you want that tanky well, if you want to be that frontline survivalist kind of super, you got to spec for it now. Very, very interesting move. Bottom Tree Dawn, on the other hand, not very good. The melee, as it is right now, is really problematic since you need to get a kill with the melee charge, and that is just not a smooth experience whatsoever. So, Igniting Touch is now becoming the following. Solar ability kills and kills on burning targets now cause targets to explode and burn other nearby enemies, who will also explode if they die while burning. That is much better. Also, Phoenix Dive has had a reduced delay before the dive starts, and you can now input a direction with it. Break out the Dawn Chorus. Let's see if Bottom Tree is a contender now. Very excited to try it out. Also, bring on the Warmind cells. Going to be some good synergy there with the burning effects. Middle Tree Stormcaller. Chaos Reach. Feels like it's hitting through walls. So they're increasing the beam environment collision size to better match collision size with damage size, which in English means they're going to make it so it doesn't feel like it's hitting through walls anymore. Reduced beam damage radius in PvP by 20%, and reduced beam endpoint sphere radius in PvP by 33%. This should reduce the feeling of being killed through a wall without actually affecting the damage of Chaos Reach. Bottom Tree Storm's a bit lackluster at the moment. Landfall's kind of and Arc Souls are neat, but could use a little bit of love, and that's what they're getting. So, Arc Soul duration increased to 13 seconds, up from 12, and the rate of fire is increased by 10%. Landfall now fires 5 arc ground projectiles on cast. Interested to see what that looks like. And Electrostatic Surge now increases sprint speed while allies are near. Finally, yes, it is coming. Middle Tree Void Walker. PvE, massive buff time. I don't even need to explain how bad it is in PvE. We all know it. Nova Warp, increased damage versus PvE combatants by 73%. No longer slows movement while charging or being charged, and now detonates on cast. Handheld Supernova was, quote, doing a pitiful amount of damage, end quote, so they're buffing its PvE damage by 100%. The hold time is now 3.2 seconds, up from 2.5. That is everything Sandbox-wise. I was kind of giving my thoughts as we went along, but these are all great buffs to some subclasses that really needed some love one way or the other. I think we'll see some questions on the whole slide mechanic situation. I know we've freaked out over many things before actually seeing them in game, and they haven't been that bad, so I'm not going to make any calls right now, like I said earlier. But good stuff. Next up, Stasis Fragments and Aspects. In Season 15, Bungie is making the following changes to reduce the mystery around powering up Stasis. After you beat the Beyond Light campaign, you will have immediate access to the Born in Darkness quest chain, no other things needed. Elsie, the Exo Stranger, will reveal all unowned fragments regardless of your progression in the quest chain. Now, hopefully Bungie does something about some of those more annoying quest steps while actually doing the fragment quests, but this change seems like it's more targeted to newer people or people who just didn't want to do all that extra stuff to get the subclass, to which I say, okay, it's been a few months, Stasis isn't as insane anymore, so that's fine. Things should get easier to access as time goes on, at least for something like this. And that's about everything. Final thoughts? Love a lot of these buffs and adjustments. Obviously, there are still some things here and there that could use attention, like melee-based subclasses still feeling tough to use in endgame content due to survivability issues. Middle Tree Hunter still feels like it could use a little bit of love, but I think this is a great wave of changes coming to the game overall. The Resilience Scaling Modifier coming with Well and Ward, again, super interesting. I really want to see how it pans out. I don't think things are drastically going to change, though. I think you just need to be prepared with the knowledge that those tools aren't invincible anymore unless you spec into them now. I think this will have the most impact on Templar because it's just blasting away at those tools. Resilience overall isn't the most appealing perk in the game, but it is now starting to impact some very influential abilities. You guys know how I feel about Well. It trivializes a large portion of the game, so now if you want that same functionality, you gotta at least spec for it, which I think is within the realm of acceptability. You just gotta build for it now. Now, I don't think that's what the game really needs in terms of getting Well of Radiance to a balanced place, but I guess it's fine for now. Seeing a lot of feedback still on Arcstrider being bad for endgame content, even with these changes, and while I don't want to come to an absolute consensus just yet, endgame PvE is just a different beast when it comes to subclass builds and viability, and historically melee-based subclasses have just not been good. I would love to see a world where melee-based things are quite viable in endgame PvE, but it's just going to be tough to make that happen because if you give people too much survivability so that they can actually do melee stuff, that might have adverse effects on the game. It's a very, very fine line that needs to be walked. Maybe we can talk about it in the future. I'm not going to talk about it right now because this video is, very, very long. Not going to hold us up here any longer. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.